This podcast is sponsored by Aleppo Restaurant on Wonderland Road North and A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family-owned and operated.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you may be listening. We welcome you back to another edition of the Vickers Crossing podcast. The Vickers Crossing is a virtual space where faith intersects with the public square. And once again, and usually as always, my name is Rob Henderson, and I'm the priest at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's in London.
My name is Kevin George. I'm the priest and rector here at St. Aidan's Anglican Church in the Northwest Corner.
And way over there
I'm Ian.
is producer Ian.
Yeah, that's me.
Still here.
The man with the new hair.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, our Facebook Live folks tuning in are able to see this, but the podcast listeners won't. Ian's got a wonderful new do.
Yeah.
Is there a name for this? Or
Yeah, how would you describe it, Ian?
Can you describe it for us?
Attention-seeking yellow.
Oh, well.
Oh,
Perfect.
well, sir, mission accomplished.
Guess what? You are done, my friend. That's good.
Yeah. I bleached my hair, just the top of it, and because I wanted to.
Sent me a text message in the middle of it, and I said, "Oh no."
Well, we're glad to be back at it for another podcast here, and as always, we want to say hello and big thanks to our sponsors who helped make all this happen. First of all, our friends at Aleppo Restaurant at 666 Wonderland Road here in London, and Dave and the gang out at A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family-owned and operated. And also, we want to give a shout-out and a special thank you to some of our colleagues and partners in ministry here in the Deanery of London, who most generously have been able to help support our podcast recently at a meeting, and we were thrilled that they were able to help put some money toward this to keep it going, and so we just want to say thanks to the Deanery of London as well and everybody that participated in that.
Yeah, that was a great surprise, a grant of like $1,000, and with our thanks to the regional dean, Bill Ward, and the Archdeacon, Sam Thomas, and a special shout out to Peter Anderson, who jumped up and amended the motion to get us that little extra bit. So
that's right.
But it's really great. We focus on things that are broader than Holy Trinity St. Stephen's or St. Aidan's. We focus on the wider church, and it's really neat that the Deanery partners have supported that mission to get the words and hope and love of Jesus and the people who follow in His way out there into the community.
Very much so, and into that digital world that just is a part of our life now. So we're glad we found a forum to be able to do that, and we appreciate the support that people have given us. And we have a very special guest that we want to welcome today. Kevin, do you want to do the formal introduction now, or?
Let's do the formal introduction after, but let's say welcome, Toinette.
Thank you. Good to be here. It's a bit intimidating as well, but happy to be.
Listen, if anybody should be intimidated here, it should be the three of us for being here with somebody who has so well served and done so much over the years. So nobody needs to be intimidated here. We're all brothers and sisters.
We are. Thank you. Thank you
be
for
at
having
ease.
me.
Be at ease.
We're thrilled to have you here. So,
Yes.
so welcome. Now, the part that you might not be too thrilled with, though, is this beginning part, because we have to take care of a little tomfoolery.
We got to be
before we get
tomfoolish.
into the serious stuff.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind.
No.
So we have a segment here on the Vickers Crossing that really is the heart and soul of the entire podcast.
It really is.
And so we'd like to head into another edition, ladies and gentlemen, of Ask Ian Anything.
Wow. That's very deep.
That is deep.
What far down in that barrel are you?
I'm pretty deep.
I think this is a very apropos question that's come in today.
Okay. Where is it from today, Kevin?
It's from one of our listeners, faithful listeners, and it's he has a local business here. This guy's name is Dave Mullen.
Dave.
Dave Mullen happens to own A. Miller George Funeral Home and its sister company, Cremation London, where each life is celebrated, but at least at the funeral home.
That's right.
Anyway, Dave sent in this question, and I you're going to love the turn of phrase in here, because I think it's fitting given that you've come in looking a little different today.
Yep.
Here is his question. He didn't know that, so here's his question.
Yep.
Ian.
Yeah.
If you had a chance for a do-over in any specific occurrence in your life, what would you do differently? Now, that's a good question.
Other than saying yes to this podcast.
Yeah,
That don't count.
Okay. I just woke up from like a nap, like maybe like half an hour ago. I'm kind of out of it.
So the do-over would be to be awake earlier?
I think I've done everything because I don't want to look back on my life with regrets, right?
Okay.
I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I wish I did blank or I regret blank. I think maybe the biggest thing, which kind of sounds very strange, but hear me out. I think the biggest thing is I wish that I was better at time management. Because in my high school years, it's like I'm looking back, like I'm 40 years old. Back when I was in high school.
Old, like 40.
In those days.
Anyway, so when I was in high school, like I wasn't a great student because I didn't really manage my time well. But it's very strange because I've quickly learned how to do that at Fanshawe.
Okay.
Like I now, like I finished a project that's due in December, like a week ago. So
You want to get my sermon together for Sunday?
sure. But I think it's because in high school I was taking courses that maybe I was interested in, but not interested in doing the homework in. Whereas this is like at Fanshawe, this is the program that like I know that I love to do. I don't think anyone should look back with regrets, obviously, because then you kind of lead a life of regrets in a way, like, oh, I regret doing this because maybe my life would be different. Like, I think life itself it's supposed to have those ups and downs, and maybe I could have done this better, but they're all learning experiences. So
not too many do-overs.
So
Nope.
yeah.
That's good.
I think that if he asked you in a couple of weeks, you might do over that hairdo.
Hey now.
Says the guy sitting here with
with
no
he has no hair. Yeah.
This is what you call envy. This is
Yeah.
bitter. This is sour grapes.
If I chop it off, I think I could glue it on top of you.
That will be attractive.
No, that's a good question because actually my wife and I were just having this conversation about
What was your do-over? Did you have
and
one?
it wasn't a do-over. It was more around like there's no regrets or things like that. But you play the what if game.
Oh,
You go
yeah.
back and you see the crossroads, right?
Yeah.
Had a decision to make here, made this decision. What
Yeah.
if I hadn't?
Yeah.
I wonder what things would have looked like if you play that what if game.
What about you, Toinette? If you had to think about that as a do-over, is there anything that leaps out at you that...
I don't think of anything I regret at the
No,
moment.
yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got so many
I would have
do-overs.
learned English. I would have learned English as a small girl rather than as an adult.
Right,
Because this
right.
accent wouldn't be
Well,
as
your accent
thick.
is incredible. You know, I have an accent too. I don't know if you noticed, but it's
Well,
from out East Coast, right?
yeah,
And
Newfoundland
so
is-
perhaps I should have learned English at a young age too.
Yeah, it would have come in handy once in a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
Well, I'm telling you, because this is a PG program, I'm not going into my regrets.
Okay.
No.
my do-overs.
So he has a
Say a little
list.
Frank Sinatra.
Dave,
right?
if you want to
Regrets.
I've had a few. So Dave, if you want to know, you're out there listening, Dave. If you want to know what my do-overs would be, that will require an appropriate adult beverage and a full afternoon.
Yeah. There's a list on the shelf over here.
We start too late already.
There's not enough ink.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Well, if you'd like to send a question for Ian to our listeners anytime, feel free to send us an email or send it to Ask Ian Anything, and we'll try to get him on the podcast for
Absolutely.
you. Okay?
We'd love
Yeah,
to have
we'll
your
do that.
questions.
And we'll have all our email
all of that
information
stuff.
out to you in just a little bit near the end of the show.
Yeah.
It's time now for our other piece of fun and frivolity, which is a little contest that we have here with Ian and Kevin and I. And this is called the Music Morsel here on the Vickers Crossing. So Kevin's going to play a little piece of music from our generation, right? Back probably recorded on old 78. So we'll listen to this, and Ian's job is to try to figure out the title and artist.
And this one here is coming at you right about between 87 and 89, I'll say. Okay?
Right.
Ready for it?
Yeah, always. That's, I think it's called either When or Where the Doves Cry, and it's by Prince, right?
Oh, man. Is
Very
it
good,
When
man.
Doves
These
Cry?
are
When
all
Doves
right.
Cry.
I feel like he has an advantage because these songs have lived on in infamy, right?
Yeah, well, they are classics. We're playing some
Yeah.
classics here. All right. Okay,
What a
Ian.
great
Well,
songs. You
that
picked
was
really
one
good
more
ones.
point for
That
you.
didn't take you long, Ian.
Ian's probably ahead. Ian's
You
probably
are a
ahead
keeper.
like 30-0 here.
It's like, yeah,
It's just a wipeout. So
It is a
we'll try to get
total-
one today. Okay?
total wipeout.
Praying.
All right, so if you are prevalent in your TV watching, you will recognize the song from the AMAs, and that's all I'm going to
Okay,
say.
the Amas. Good.
The AMAs. Here we go.
I think it's Taylor Swift.
Okay, and?
Cannot think of the title.
Okay. Rob?
I think it's Beyonce.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that. That should be the only one I would think that might be at the AMAs because I don't watch them.
Okay, this is Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello singing a song called Señorita. Of course.
Yes, of course it
Of
is.
course, everybody
It's just, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Now that you say it, it just
Yes.
like,
I mean,
all
when you
becomes
say it,
clear.
it's so
I have
obvious.
been thinking of it all that time.
Now, speaking of music, this is kind of interesting. I was thinking about Ian on this.
Oh, thanks.
That Ian's one of Ian's professors.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and head of the music industry arts program over at Fanshawe.
Oh, yeah.
Got quite an interesting phone call a week ago.
Yeah, so Dan Broadback is the coordinator of music industry arts, and not only is he won a Juno for engineering, he's been nominated for a Grammy. Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah,
you
Going
got
to
a
the
phone
Grammys
call
this
last
year,
week.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, with the work he did with the Cranberries, right?
yeah.
I've had cranberries.
It was
Why didn't I? Why didn't I get
You know,
invited?
there's pills for that, Kevin.
It was the best rock album or something like that, nominated for rock album of the year, I think.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's neat. We'll watch for him.
Yes. Wow.
All right, enough of the silliness. Should we get down to some?
Let's get down to
brass
some
tacks
serious business here, right?
Let's do this.
Yeah,
So,
sure. That's
yeah.
why we are here.
so we have Toinette with us, and once again, we welcome you. Kevin, want to
Thank you,
get a little
Ron.
introduction
Yeah.
for our listeners and let everybody know.
So a little bit about Toinette. I got to know Toinette just through her work here in the community with LArche, having seen her around at different events in town, being at the LArche dinners and up at Brescia whenever anything's been happening. What's going on? Is everything okay?
Santa just landed on the roof.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you hear something here, it's because we have some workers on the roof. But anyway, so going back, was very fortunate to get to know Toinette, and Toinette is a member of LArche London. Over her lifetime, she's lived in LArche in France, in Palestine, and in Israel, and of course here in Canada. She's been a live-in assistant at LArche France and in Bethany, a community leader of LArche here in London, the developmental officer for the last 6 years, the regional leader of LArche, and part of the national team. And as she describes it, in the moment, she's in transition. But she is, I like how she says she's the wife of one and a mother of four. She's a wife of one and a mother of four, she tells me. And you can find Toinette around London in the trails because she loves walking in nature, and you'll find her out in the Warbler Woods and in back of here at the Sifton Bog and out in Kamoka. And she loves the trails, and she loves being out on the trails.
Yes.
And she's into thanatology, mediation and counseling, and all kinds of great things. But beyond all that, she is just an incredibly warm, inviting, beautiful, funny, kind, caring human being. And so we're just so happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Great. Well, welcome. And
Thank you.
And Toinette, you've described yourself as a citizen of the world, if you will. As Kevin mentioned, you were born in France, and about 40 years ago, you had this intersection with LArche and the LArche community. Can you take us back a little bit and think about back when you first walked into that first LArche home? What was that experience like for you, and how has that decision to connect with them changed or affected your life?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll change your question. And
Well, we're happy to have our questions changed.
yes. So today it's a special day for me. It would be my father's 99th birthday.
Oh, wow.
So today I'm thinking of my father. And I was born in Brittany, in western part of France. And Dad, I would compare him to an oak tree. Solid, strong, rural background, rooted very deep. And Brittany at the time was probably 99% Catholic according to the, to the documentation of the church. And I grew up in that culture, rural culture, Catholic by definition. But I came at an age where I was asking, what is the purpose of my life? And I was not going to continue to attend church just to please the old folks, okay? Mm-hmm. Thanks for giving me that, but what does that mean? Because I was attracted by the reading of the gospel and disgusted when our good priest, peace to his soul, preached beautifully about the poor, but was so annoyed when they showed up at church. And I was in that kind of conversation saying, where do the two marry? There is something there which doesn't fully work. So that was the context. In Brittany, we had lots of church people who had gone in mission to Africa. So I carried in me the dream to go to Africa. Thought that's probably noble enough. And so for that, I studied agriculture and I studied teaching. Because with that in a toolbox, you could potentially go, Today, I am not too sure that all of the work that French people did in Africa, I would support the way I did naively then. Colonization, I've learned a lot since. But at the time, that was kind of my dream. So I was searching for the purpose of my life. I was searching for what is that church stuff out there, the gospel. Mm-hmm. Is it real or is it just a fairy tale? And then I was disgusted by all the injustice in our world, and then the church, which could have been, or in those days I would say should have been, was not a partner and was not invested in that conversation the way the social justice conversation and so on was disappointing to me. So that was kind of where I was. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I had a spiritual director who introduced me to someone who happened to not be a priest and not a hierarchy in the church, in the person of Jean Vaniér, and who lived a life shared with people with disabilities. So that was attractive to me. I knew very little, if nothing, about people with disabilities, except that my first year teaching, the word inclusion was fashionable, Mm-hmm. And so the principal at the school said, by the way, you will have 2 different grades in your classroom, and there is a little guy whose name is Vincent, and who happened to have Down syndrome. And I said, and should I know more about that? You'll figure it out. I need to say that came a night of February, where I was by the fireplace thinking, I am a teacher of 32 kids. By the seat of my pants, I prepared, the class for tomorrow for the 2 different grades. The little guy who maybe needs me the most, I am failing in a way. My prayer at this moment at 1 a.m. is, I hope tomorrow he is not going to be agitated, to use the word I would have used, that he is going to be quiet. And I thought, again, things don't add up here. This is not what inclusion is about. And so the word inclusion was fashionable in a teacher's college, but when the rubber hits the road, it was not exactly
showing itself.
Yes, it was not showing. So when I first encountered Jean Vaniér, it was impactful on my life because I think he was naming a vision of a society, and he was trying to walk the talk. Mm-hmm. And the gap seemed to be a bit smaller, between the intention and the lived life. So that attracted me. And it was at the time of the communes as well in the world, and intentional communities which were happening. In some that didn't last very long, others that were temporary, really. So, but LArche was there as an invitation. And in a way, I went to LArche, I would say, answering a call. And it was a call that at that time I had discovered the gospel, I had read the gospel, and I entered into a relationship with Jesus in prayer. Love, hate some days, trying to figure it out. And when I distilled what I was searching for a community where the gospel in the person of Jesus was real, in the incarnation of people that I would call different, people who didn't have room in the mainstream, people who were marginalized or excluded, and people with intellectual disabilities were that at that time and still are, unfortunately, quite a bit today. So I would say the role of Jean Vaniér in that was a bit the role of John the Baptist. John the Baptist showed the way and pointed to Jean pointed to the people with disabilities. And so I left teaching and I went to LArche. And my first night in Trolliboy, I said to Jean at the time, I know there are some needs in LArche in Africa. Well, I could go. To which I was told, welcome to Trolley.
Yeah.
We can speak in few months. Why don't...
Yeah, don't, just hold on.
So I said, okay.
Yeah,
I was young and I lacked gray at the time. I was very black or white.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty judgmental too, I need to confess. Humbly.
That's happened in here before.
That has happened before.
Confession, yeah.
Okay, good. So, yeah, judgmental about the church, judgmental about people whose discourse didn't match their way of life, and that kind of thing. So I came to LArche and I was invited to live in a house with 5 men who had intellectual disabilities and a team of 4 assistants, out of which I was one. I didn't know how to cook for 10, 11, so first meal I prepared, Jean-Pierre said, man, you may as well go home, you're useless. I had a meal which couldn't...
I can boil water.
we couldn't, 11 of us didn't get much of my meal, thanks God for the big French bread, and we all had bread. Yeah. The next meal I cooked, we probably ate out of it for 3 days because I went
made for 30.
What I have discovered though is that living with the people in the home I was in was an experience which was inviting me to a place of transformation and a place of changes. Not so much changing the people out there, but changing in here. So I realized that the trip I wanted to take from Charles de Gaulle, France to Africa, I had started to take, which was a trip inside.
It was an interior trip.
It was within. Yeah. And living with Patrick, who was 20 years my elder, who had disabilities and had been outcast for many, many reasons, was an incredible journey. I would compare it to the peeling of an onion. I don't know if any of you cooks, But living with Patrick days in and days out, I felt that Patrick was peeling the onion I was and taking away the layers. I had prepared myself to meet, the teacher and to meet the banker and to meet the priest and to change or adjust. Patrick was not very sophisticated, so therefore, who is there is who you see, and there is no place to hide.
Yeah.
Right.
When it was love for Patrick, you knew it. Yeah. When it was anger, you knew it as well. And then I reflected on my own family journey, because as a woman in my 20s at the time, I didn't know at all what anger was. It was not an emotion which was welcomed in our family. I've never seen my mother being angry. I saw my dad, but that was not a woman emotion. And I had seen my mother being resentful, but not angry. Living with Patrick, who had no means to hide his anger, revealed to me like a big mirror that I was as angry as he was in some of the situations.
Was that a layer? Was that one of the
That was
layers?
one of the
That's
layers.
an example of,
Yes.
You talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? It's boiling with anger in there. What am I going to do with it? And it was a tremendous lesson to discover who I was, to discover who he was, and to meet someone who was by all means different than who I was. We were born in a very different social, economic background from... I come from rural. He was from a very aristocratic family. We had different way of entertaining, I would call it, and so on. But here it was meeting the other, whom I had not prepared for, and that was an opportunity of great transformation and growth for me. So that I just use Patrick here as an example because today Patrick still is alive, and I've never gone to France without visiting him.
Wow. How old is Patrick now?
So Patrick will turn 80 in January.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
And it's a big miracle. I mean, the number of times we have thought he would have left us. Remember, 5 years ago, he was so sick. And I phoned the intensive care unit at the hospital in Compiègne to say goodbye to Patrick because I was told he was at the end. And by God's grace, and he is still part of us.
He's still
today.
with us.
Wow.
Yes.
Wonderful.
I listened to you. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Toinette's journey has been incredible. And just thinking about a couple of the things that you just said about how disillusioned you were with the church's inability to welcome those that were othered, right? That we could talk about it. We could talk about it well then, but how well were we actually doing it? And I think that's a part of like what we've been doing here at the Vicar's Crossing. One of the reasons we want to do this is to have these sorts of conversations about that intersectionality. Like, how do we take the life-transforming message of love and justice and acceptance and tolerance and bring it to the world? And I think that LArche is probably, of everything, is just the most shining example of that, of being able to welcome those that many have othered. They turn them into other than ourselves. And when you talk about it, I mean, it's interesting. You went to that place to help and to give. And what happened when you went was Patrick began to help you.
Absolutely.
And to teach you.
He has been the greatest teacher. I have had great teacher at university, at Teachers College, when I did my master here, but I owe him something that none of the other teachers have ever given me.
And so when we do that, I mean, it's as if we're joining God in the work that God is already doing and accomplishing in people that, for whatever reason, we've not noticed, right? And then when you begin to notice Patrick, when people get in relationship with Patrick and many others like him, something changes. And I think that's one of the powers of Jean Vaniér, and the fact that, this man who was a layperson, who was not a priest, but who was, in all accounts, in my mind, a saint, and that lived among us in our time, an amazing man. He wrote these words about community, and I was thinking about them then too while you were talking about that, and what community does, and how we often focus on the large things, but it's often the simple things that really make a community and make community for everybody, for the people who may be on the fringe, right? So he wrote that a community is only being created when its members accept that they are not going to achieve great things, that they are not going to be heroes, but simply live each day with hope, like children, in wonderment as the sun rises and in thanksgiving as it sets. Community is only being created when they have recognized that the greatness of a person is to accept insignificance, to accept the human condition, and to accept the earth, and to thank God for having put in a finite body the seeds of eternity, which are visible in small and daily gestures of love and forgiveness. The beauty of a human is this fidelity to the wonder of each and every day. Now, when you hear those words, and you knew Jean, and every time I think of Jean Vaniér now, I think of you, and I think, what must it have been like to know him? I met him just once, briefly, and so I have no experience. All of his writing and everything to me has been heroic, and he would hate that word because he did everything so when you look at it. But when I read it, it's like it's life-changing stuff, and so I think about you. Jean was a gift to the world, and his death not so long ago now brought so many people together from all corners of the world that have been affected because he created this beautiful community of L'Arche that now has welcomed so many people the world over. And it was amazing to hear the outpouring of love and of thanksgiving for Jean and his life from all corners of the world. So as you reflect on those words and on your own experiences as Jean, your friend, your mentor, and how his witness has affected us all, what has it been for you? What is Jean Vaniér's greatest gift to us?
I think Jean would say, I am not a saint, and he wouldn't want to be, and he is not. He's far from being perfect, and he has a shadow side. At the same time, he has had a charism to show and to reveal that people with intellectual disabilities, but not just people with intellectual disabilities, people who have been pushed on the margin, people who have been invisible, who have not been seen, are really agents of transformation of our churches, of our society. And if we do not meet them, we fail our world. And when I listen to the words of St. Paul, speaking of the body made of many parts, and the parts of the body that we treat with the most respect are the most vulnerable. And I think that's probably one of the messages that Jean leaves with us, right. And that the body is incomplete when all the parts are not there. Jean is a messenger. He is not the yes, he is a messenger, and he is not alone. At the time of his death, in the Sojourner, I think there was an article written by Caroline Whitney Brown, I think, and she titled it "An Icon, Not an Idol." Speaking
icon,
of
not
Jean,
an idol. Okay, yeah.
And I think that's probably something I relate to. I relate to that article quite a bit. Right. I think Jean is not a saint, wouldn't want to be, and it has been the work of the communal work with him and around him, which has been possible to reveal the gift of people with disabilities, and that he would want. It's difficult in a way but he would want the name of community being named prior to his name, right. Singled out.
Which is for me what makes, I think about the word saint in the way that St. Paul wrote about it, in terms of the community of the faithful, with all of their flaws and all of their brokenness and all of their warts to be exposed in that. I think sometimes we talk about the saints in such a way as if there was never anything wrong with them, which is just a fairy tale, if you ask me, because we all have, as you say, our shadow side, right?
Yes.
But to me, what makes the greatest of the saints among us, because I talk about, at All Saints we talk about that too, everybody,
yeah.
Is really that insistence on the other, on community, on the small acts, and I just think when in that quote, like when he talks about the simplicity of doing the singular things in a day, of being attentive, of being aware,
Yeah.
and that business of sort of mindfulness, of being mindful of the other and of the creation and of the beauty around us. And it's a beautiful gift, I think, that he's given to those of us who were fortunate enough to read his words. Right. And I can't even imagine for those who had the opportunity to know him.
Yes. I think one of the gifts he has been to affirm, the gifts which were within, but to call them forth and affirm them. Right. Mm-hmm. That has been true for me. And I went to his funeral with Michael from LArche in Hamilton, who was a core member who has been there. And we had lived in institutions for a very long time in Norelia, I believe. But Michael would say he is the one who got me out, and was given me a life.
You went to his funeral in France?
I was at Jean's funeral with Michael, yes.
And what was that experience?
Yeah. It will happen only once in the history of our community, that our founder dies. It was a gift to be there with people from our international federation and to be the delegate with Mike from Ontario, to witness, to be grateful for the charism he has left us. Yeah. As our international leader also told us, it's now an essential time where the torch is passed on to us to bring LArche, not LArche the way we lived it 55 years ago. Jean started LArche at a time in history when the needs were the needs of the time. But what does the world need of LArche today?
Right.
And to not dream of the onions of Egypt, which were much sweeter then, but what is our vision and mission today? Right. And I think it was very empowering to be with Michael, for whom Jean symbolizes the living the institution, the big walls, having a life. I mean, the Tiger Cats were playing in Hamilton, and I can tell you that Mike was there.
He was there, right?
Cheering
full guts and cheering, and to have traveled to visit LArche in Brazil 2 years ago, So Michael is grateful for for what Jean has done for him, because it has opened the doors of the institution. Jean is not the only one. Many community living and participation house and other movement. But the movement of creating intentional community is probably quite particular to LArche, okay. And it's in living the small things, days in and days out. It's not very sexy to do dishes today and tomorrow and the day after, or to cook, and so on. But to do with, to be with, not to do for, but to do with. Right. I had the privilege this morning to sit with my friend Corinne, and we were together for the mandate for our community for the next 4 years, and to be present to each other, to be with each other. Right. Corinne has no words, and that's okay.
So she's nonverbal.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I have this image of when you were talking about that, it popped into my head was the story of the road to Emmaus, and how Jesus is walking alongside and talking to the disciples, right? Yes. The men on the road. And it's that idea of walking alongside in holiness and not out in front.
Absolutely.
Putting yourself out in front, but walking alongside, right? That's what I'm hearing you say, the great gift of this community and what Jean did. Yeah.
And I think you touch on the essence of what community is about. Yeah. It's to know the person, to miss the person when the person is not there, to know his like or his dislike, to know, to see the person as a gift. The Psalm 139 is written for each one of us. Yes. There is not one person in the world for whom that psalm is not written. I love you. I know each one of your bones, each hair on your head, or not.
Or not.
But I know all the cells of your body. I know you. And I know what makes you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I love you. And you are my beloved one.
Right.
I hold you in the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
And there is not one of us, verbal, non-verbal, tall, short, with an accent, with refugees. There is not one who is not, for whom this psalm is not written for.
Right, right. And there's so much there to learn, as you were mentioning for yourself, what you learned about yourself and those layers being drawn back. And all of us have that opportunity in community like that, especially to learn more about ourselves and who we are. Yeah. And I read an interesting quote from an article that was from a little while ago, and you had mentioned something to the effect of that people with intellectual disabilities are not very good at wearing masks.
Right.
And when you live in that context, it changes you. Can you talk a little bit about what you meant by that when you're talking about how they don't wear masks and how that can affect us?
Uh-huh. Well, I think I was trained by my mother and my father, as well as my teacher at the young age, to put a certain mask for situations,
Right.
not as an intentional coping mechanism. That was not, but to be appropriate and to be, And I think many of the people with whom I live in community don't have the sophistication to create the mask. So therefore, what you see, who you meet is who is there. And either you welcome it or you don't. But... So I think of Patrick. He has been a great invitation for me to tear some of those masks down and to face who I am with the gift I am, with the shadow I have as well, and to welcome both,
Right.
both sides.
It's wholeness, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
To recognize that Jean was not perfect. None of us are perfect, and all of us are loved. And I am loved. Mm-hmm. You are loved. You are precious. I am precious. When you are not there, you are missed. When you are not there, I think inclusion, what I discovered much later in life, to go back to my teacher's college days, I had learned about inclusion a little bit, too little to be competent. But inclusion is to see people for who they are, to know them, to know their gifts, and to miss them when they are not there. Mm-hmm. And it's true for not just for people with disabilities.
That's right.
And I want to pay attention to our world here in Ontario. We have closed the big institutions.
Yes.
And I'm pretty proud to have been part of that in the 20 years I have been in our LArche London community. Mm-hmm. This morning, on one of my side, Peter came to sit by me. And Peter spent more than 59 years in an institution where he had the life which was the life of the institution. Today, we need to pay attention to the institutions which do not have walls.
Right.
Yeah.
The invisible institutions, because we still create some boxes.
We build walls.
We get trapped in them.
Yes, they don't. You don't belong. You don't behave the right way. Sure. So those invisible walls are also could trap us.
Yeah, yeah.
The normalcy of the institution, when you don't behave according to that. So I think that people, many of my friends, have a tremendous gift to tear those masks down.
Yeah.
And make us free.
Make us free, yeah.
Make us free.
It is free.
And I don't want to use people for my advantage either. I think the other big piece that I have learned from the people I live with is I have been there. If I think of Mary in my community, I have had the privilege to walk with Mary, difficult path on her health and so on. But I have also been the recipient of Mary's care when I had breast cancer. Mm. Mary was there, not as a friend. She knows me well. I know her, she knows me, and we can walk in mutuality. It's not a one-way street. People with disability are recipient of care. Right. People, once they discover who they are, what their gift is, have lots to give. And that's where they can become real agent of transformation for our church community, our neighborhood, and our society. A tremendous power of the heart to give and to transform things. We sometimes have, I can say the four of us most likely, have the skills to build a wall between our head and our heart.
Sure, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And I can rationalize and create an argument to be right. I will not give money to that guy at the corner of the street because I know him. I knew his grandmother is going to spend it on drugs, and I have a very strong argument. I don't think that Jesus is asking me any of that.
Right.
He's asking me to give generously. What the person will do with it. So, do you see what I mean? I tend to create new walls of institutions, whatever we call it, the normal and the not normal, the have and the have not, the
Well,
In and out. And,
Yes.
and
who's in, who's out.
we can become quite recalcitrant about it too, right? Like very stubborn and headstrong. Like we instead of extending the table, we're building the wall. Because we know who we like to have around and who we don't want to have around. I always said it's easy. The baptismal covenant says, will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I always say, well, it's easy for me to love the ones I like. It's loving the ones that make me uncomfortable.
push my buttons
Or
all
I
the
don't
time
like.
and over.
That's what's difficult.
Yes.
That's what's difficult. And those walls that we build up around, it mostly built with a toolbox of fear.
That's right.
Like those things that we're afraid of. It's
So
safer in
true.
my little box.
And especially
And-
now,
And yeah, we do that.
right? Because now with the social media and stuff, right?
Sure.
So now it's an echo chamber. So now you can make it so that you only hear what you want to hear.
Right.
So it's easy to love people that you want to hear.
Yes.
But how do you love those that you don't want to hear, that are outside the echo chamber?
And that's where I think LArche, in a way, has a message of bridge building
Yes.
between unlikely friendship. Most likely I would not have been a friend of Patrick had we been on the same university campus.
Right.
Because he
Yeah,
would not
you
have
would
been
not
there,
have met, yeah.
but we
Yeah.
would not have met. But I think and Jean has spoken of the sacrament of the encounter.
Yeah, I love
The
that.
sacrament of the encounter. To meet the person, to meet the other, and welcoming the other for who the other is. Not what I want him or her to become, but for who he is, and without judging, without putting in a label box so that it comes out, and that takes tremendous discipline.
Sure.
Yes, it
But
does.
I think that's what Jesus invites us to do. It's to build bridges.
And LArche certainly has done that. And, you think about where it started years ago and how it's expanded. And there are communities throughout. And the good news is here in the London area, that exists as well. And so I wondered if we could find out a little bit more about the LArche community here, because I know it's been active and recently just opened a new center in Lambeth.
That's right, yeah.
Just outside or in London. Maybe you could share with our listeners a little bit about the local LArche
Yes.
community. Those that are in this area would love to hear about that and its place in the London community. Tell us a bit
Yeah.
about that.
So LArche in London is part of that international federation
Sure.
of communities, and we have more than 140 communities around the world, in the north and in the south and so on. And in London we have 3 homes, 2 in Byron and 1 in Westmount. And we also have opened the gathering place 2 years ago, more or less. And the gathering place is a place of belonging for many people who do join us for music club on Monday morning, people with and without disabilities. I think that's what excites me about the LArche
Yeah,
mission.
yeah.
It's people with and without disabilities, and who intentionally choose to build something together and to be there for each other through thick and thin. And so the music club on Monday morning gathers, 110 people every Monday morning, Now there is a drumming circle, which is an integrated drumming circle for people who are aging, whatever aging mean. I was there last week, and I was delighted
Are
to
you
be.
aging? Are you aging, Toinette?
I am. Do you see?
Okay. I don't think you've ever aged. On the other hand,
I'm mature.
I am aging. Continue. Sorry.
You are ancient.
I'll continue.
But no, that I was. It was my first time to attend a community drumming circle. But you had people who are in the London community. I had never met them, and I do not know much about them except that they love drumming, and as well as some members from the community who were there. To create beauty is another thing that comes with being human. To co-create with our God who creates beauty everywhere all the time.
Beautiful.
And to create art. So I look at Janet in my community. To give a talk is not her first thing, but to paint or to do rug hooking. She can do that with great love and passion, and it gives her life. And I do remember the first time at one of our picnic when we unveiled a mosaic Janet had made for our first home. I was very, very touched to see Janet with her dad, and she stood so straight when that mosaic was unveiled.
Yeah.
It was as if the 150 people, whatever we were, could see the beauty Janet can create and can welcome her gift of giving beauty to the world. So it's moments like that which are very, very affirming. So at the moment, many, friends do join us for different activities, and that's what the gathering place is. We have a social enterprise, a cafe.
The cafe, yeah.
Yes. Have you been?
I haven't been yet.
Not
I keep
yet.
saying, no, we're going to have to go. Yeah.
Thursday
Just pack it up.
morning, you need
Thursday
to
morning,
make it happen, guys.
Yeah.
First, the goodies are delicious.
Well, there you go.
And the cafe is perfect. So it's on Thursday morning. It's not open all week long because, we need to sustain what we have before we grow. But it's an incredible place of encounter again. Yeah. I mean, we are strong on relationship, being intentional about building relationship. And so people come for different reasons, buy their coffee and have an opportunity to meet others. Sure. What else is happening? So art, painting, line dancing, lots of different activities are happening at the gathering place.
That's great. What a gift for us locally to have that. Yeah.
And so the people who are, as I'm hearing you say it, it's not just the residents of the three houses that are here.
No,
but
absolutely
it's
not.
people across the city who could use those services.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Now, I know, speaking of relationships, you've created many over your lifetime. You've lived well, I think, what Shawn exemplified. You really do. I feel like the first time I met you, I knew you forever. I really did. Because your heart is so open. And I think it's just, I don't know how anybody comes in your presence and doesn't feel better. And I can only imagine those people that you've encountered both in France, I say both, but in France, in Palestine, in Israel, in Stratford, here, all over the world where you've been, the places you've visited, must all feel the same way. But you just recently went back to the Holy Land.
Yes.
For the first time in a while, I guess.
Tony and I went. As I stepped down from my role as regional leader, and I had not taken my vacation this summer, I thought, well, it's a nice way to not carry the files with you by doing something kind of different than routine, not staying close. So we decided to go, Tony and I, and we went, and we spent a week in Bethlehem, and then a week in Galilee. And then from there, we traveled. The week in Bethlehem was in the West Bank and was an opportunity to visit the LArche community, Man Elayat in Bethlehem, and to meet the community today, which does fantastic job of where Christian, Muslim live together and do craft together, do not live together. I'm so sorry. People don't live under the same roof. They go back
see.
at home, but they come for
They come
the
together,
activities.
Sort
you
of
know?
like the gathering place out
That's
here.
correct.
Same idea?
Yes, yeah. And they do beautiful felting and nativities and lots of beautiful things. But when I participated with the community one afternoon, what I observed is that everybody around the table contribute to something. Not one person can do it all,
Right.
but everybody does a piece, and at the end it creates the total, you know. And that's really a great image. So that was fantastic to be there.
Especially in the West Bank. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
the notion of people from, you know, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever, people working together
Yeah,
and creating something.
yeah, and
And
something beautiful.
Something beautiful
Yeah.
in the midst of violence and destruction and segregation
Yeah.
must be profound.
It is. I mean, it was painful. We stayed at a monastery for a week in Bethlehem and by the wall, at the
Right.
foot of the wall. And walls are difficult. I mean, I was excited years back when the Berlin Wall, fell. I believe profoundly that our mission needs to be a bridge builder.
Yeah.
And I think being there was a great invitation to encounter each story. Each story is important. Each person is important. The tears of a mother who has a son with a disability or a daughter with a disability are as sour on one side of the wall as they are on the other side.
Right. Same bitter tears. And other thing, any other parts of that trip that?
Well,
Big
I mean
highlights.
the church also. I mean the churches in the country. You know, there is pain for the churches of the East. You know, the Eastern churches are persecuted. I would say in many regards. You know, and a very small minority. So high. But to meet, I mean, it was incredible to reconnect with the people from 35 years ago. That
Right.
was
Well, yeah, I was thinking
fantastic.
as I entered into that about the relationship. I bet you connected with people you knew from 35 years ago.
Absolutely. That was the first full week.
Yeah.
And sure, to be on the holy places gives the text a new dimension, you know. We stayed by the Sea of Galilee for 6 nights. And just rereading in Tabga, the multiplication of the bread, or to witness the sea being agitated and all of a sudden, you know, being quiet, it gives a new dimension to the readings. Yeah. To see the house of Peter's, you know, it's one of the historical sites, I think, that many do say is authentic site. There are many sites we think it's somewhere around, but the house of Peter seems in Capernaum seems to be an authentic place. And to say, well, and Peter was one of those fishermen that we just saw, and who was not necessarily that sophisticated, and he's the one who was called to be the church builder. So it gives a new taste to the reading. I mean, sitting there and thinking, my God, that crowd, how is that going to happen to feed them?
Yeah, you have
and
that
then
picture in your head, right?
You
When
think of yourself being not enough.
Yeah.
I am not enough. I don't do enough. And then the invitation from Jesus to offer the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and to let him transform it, you know.
Yeah.
That's not your job. Your job is not to hold on to it, but it's to give it, to offer it,
away,
and then
It was in the giving and the offering of it was the multiplication of it.
That's right, yes. Yeah. To be in Nazareth, I mean, and that place where Mary said yes,
Yeah.
and the Word became flesh,
Right.
and that changed salvation and humanity,
Everything,
right?
yeah,
Changed everything.
Wow.
So those are
for you.
certainly moments. But I enjoyed the also tremendously meeting the living stones of the country today. I suffer when I see pilgrims or tourists who only see the archaeological places
Yeah.
without meeting the people
Right.
who are living there here today.
Right.
That's
The people who have to live with the wall and the checkpoint.
that's
and
right. Yeah,
everything that goes with that.
yeah.
Brings certainly a different context when you're there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
It's wonderful. Good. Well, tonight we can't thank you enough for spending some time with us. I could just sit here and listen all day.
I mean,
Yeah, but I got to go to church on Sunday. So
yeah, I do too.
we
I
could just
feel
keep
for
going
you.
on and on and on. yeah, this is wonderful.
Yes.
So
Well, thank you for
so
having me.
much, for coming and sharing your story and a little bit about LArche. And you've certainly been a gift to us today, and I know you've been a gift to so many. And we
you.
certainly wish you well as you move into this new transitional period of your time, and maybe we'll see you out on the trails sometime.
Most
Yeah,
likely.
Yeah, I hope to see
Yes.
you out there. So. Good. Well, we want to thank Toinette and producer Ian for dropping by, of course, and taking care of all our technical stuff today. So thanks, buddy. All
Awesome.
right.
No problem.
Appreciate that. And also want to thank our sponsors, as always, Aleppo Restaurant at 666 Wonderland Road in London, and A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family-owned and operated. And where can people send their emails and find us and get a hold of us, Kevin?
Email Toinette Parisio. No, I'm
No.
kidding. If you want to find us, you can email us at vicarscrossing@gmail.com. We'd love to get your feedback on this episode and any and all of our episodes, and we'd love to hear from you about our segments. And if you have a question for Ian, for Ask Ian Anything, just send it along to there, and you'll find us wherever podcasts are found. And if you're listening to us now, you can share us with your friends. But we're on iTunes and Spotify, and we're on SoundCloud and Buzzsprout and all those fancy places. We're on Facebook Live. Hello, Facebook Livers. And we've enjoyed getting the word out there, and we're hoping that now we might even do more so with the extra resource from the Deanery and other places. So, so grateful to all of you who listen to us. Please be in touch with us.
Yes, we'll look forward to hearing from you. And until we get back together again next time, my name is Rob Henderson.
I'm Kevin George.
And I'm Ian.
And remember to always look both ways.
Before you cross the street.
Thank you for listening. Our hosts are Kevin George and Rob Henderson. Our producer and composer is myself, Ian, with original artwork done by Catherine Olenek. If you have any questions or want to know where to find us, tweet us at Vickers Crossing, or find us on Facebook at The Vickers Crossing. If you have any other questions about anything heard on this podcast, leave us a comment or look in the description to find out more. Thanks!